Heads up, this podcast isn't therapy. It's bold, blunt, and irreverent, but it's not a substitute for professional help. Full disclaimer is in the blurb below. If you've ever said, I know they're bad for me, but I can't let go, this episode is your mirror. Stay with me, you'll learn why you're addicted to chaos, how your nervous system is lying to you, and how to finally break free from the cycle without breaking yourself. This isn't a story about them, it's about how your past keeps choosing your future until you stop. So if you're stuck on someone who hurts you, that's not love, it's a trauma bond. I'll show you how it's formed, why it feels addictive, and how to finally get free. Stay to the end, it might just change everything. So chemistry, chaos, and the lies you tell yourself. Let's be honest, you've been there. The person who felt like home but also like an emergency. One minute they're making you feel seen, electric and alive, and the next minute you're pacing, waiting for a reply, and questioning your own reality. Somewhere deep inside, you still think, maybe this is the one. Spoiler alert, it's definitely not. It's your nervous system reenacting an old war and calling it romance. So this episode is for anyone who keeps asking, why do I feel so much with the wrong person? We're diving into the 4 biggest truths people don't want to face. So this is all about trauma bonding, an addiction that looks like love. Trauma bonding is a hot-cold cycle that feels like connection, but it's actually survival mode seduction. The more they confuse you, the deeper you bond. It's a dopamine cortisol cocktail with a love song mixed in. So it's not your fault. It's just your nervous system trying to finish an old story. You weren't in love. You were in a well-timed stress response with someone with fabulous apps. If your friends need a spreadsheet in a group WhatsApp to keep up with your love life, it's definitely not intimacy. It's a crisis in incredibly cute clothes. So here we go with the chemistry trap. You think it's destiny and it's actually familiar dysfunction. You keep picking people who activate your deepest issues and call it passion. Real connection can feel boring if you grew up equating chaos with love, and sparks are often trauma's way of recognizing itself. If your type has historically destroyed you, maybe it's time to lose your type. So you need to first of all stop saying we had amazing chemistry and start saying my unresolved trauma just did a backflip. So trust your intuition over anxiety and question who's actually talking. Remember, your intuition is really calm. It's your inner compass. Anxiety is quite loud. It's your childhood wound with a megaphone. And if your gut feeling arrives in a full body panic at 2 a.m., it's probably your nervous system reacting. Definitely not divine guidance. So if your inner knowing only activates when they haven't texted in 7 hours, that's not spiritual. It's anxious attachment. And remember this, intensity is definitely not intimacy. Just because it's highly dramatic doesn't mean it's deep. Intimacy is incredibly boring sometimes. It's somebody showing up, texting back, and remembering how you like your coffee. If that feels kind of flat to you, congratulations, you've just met emotional safety. So if you said it felt dull, maybe it was just regulated. So you need to remember this, you're not broken, you're conditioned. You're definitely not needy, you're not weak, and you're not too much. You're just wired to repeat what you've always known. And here's the thing, you can rewire and you can choose safety. You can build a love life that doesn't make you question your worth every other Tuesday. You're not exactly asking for too much, you're just asking the wrong person. I say this to you with so much kindness. You don't have to settle for survival when you were born for connection. And I often ask myself, why the hell certain people feel so hooked on someone who's hurting them in an excruciating way. Let's strip it back. Everyone knows somebody or could have been that person with their heart cracked open, their eyes looking confused, and they're checking their phone every 5 minutes hoping for a breakroom. So why is it that you can't let go even when you know you should? What exactly is trauma bonding really? Well, trauma bonding is what happens when your nervous system confuses inconsistency with intimacy. It's not love. It's a chemical attachment formed through emotional starvation and random crumbs of reward. And the reason why you feel addicted is because, in a way, you are. Your body and mind is chasing the next hit of validation, reassurance, or perhaps tenderness. You will wait for the next "I miss you" like a gambler pulling a lever. Maybe this time, maybe this time, maybe this time. So let me just make it really clear. They confuse you, they hurt you, and they come back just enough to keep hope alive. Your system bonds not with who they are, but to the high of being chosen again. How exactly does this form? Through repetition, unpredictability, and hope. They give you just enough to keep you emotionally invested, and then they pull away, ghost, lash out, or withdraw affection. And your attachment system goes into overdrive, asking yourself, what did I do and how on earth can I fix this? And then, bam, they come back and you feel euphoric, relieved. See, they do care. No, they don't. So that cycle releases powerful chemicals, cortisol, dopamine, oxytocin, that train you to seek safety from the very person creating the danger. You end up bonded to the apology, not the person. Hooked on the relief after pain, not the relationship itself. So let's have a look at the psychodynamics beneath this. So here's the deeper layer, what your unconscious is often replaying. So if you grew up with inconsistent love where affection was unpredictable or earned, and your body now recognizes chaos as familiar, you learn to feel close through effort and not safety. So when someone triggers that old dance, you don't run, you dig in. You think, if I can make them love me, it'll undo all the places I felt unloved before. This is the truly haunting part. You're not just fighting for the relationship, you're fighting for the version of yourself that never got to feel fully chosen. And then we have the illusion of progress. So people in trauma bonds often say things like, but we've been through so much together. And, oh, we have such a deep connection. I just know they're going to come back. Whereas the truth says, you haven't been through it together, you've been put through it by them. The connection is likely a co-regulation loop built on chaos, definitely not real intimacy. And let me be really clear, no, they're not coming back for you. They're coming back to reset the cycle. So let me be real here. You weren't in love. You were completely dysregulated. That flutter in your chest and your tummy definitely was not soul recognition. This was your amygdala screaming, oh Jesus Christ, here we go again. So if your friends need a timeline, a flowchart, or a PowerPoint to follow your relationship, it's definitely not fate. It's a trauma bond. And while I'm saying that kind of severely, no, you're not stupid, you're not weak, and you're definitely not pathetic for wanting it to work. You're human and you're hungry for connection, you're wired that way. But that hunger will eat you alive if it keeps reaching for people who feed you just enough scraps to keep you starving. So why does it feel so good when they come back? What is this neurochemical hit all about? So let me outline the original blueprint. It all stems from inconsistency in childhood. So trauma bonding in adulthood doesn't start with the ex who's ghosted you, it usually starts with someone who loved you, albeit inconsistently. Let's look at what that can sound like growing up. I never knew which version of my parent I was going to get. Some days they were warm, playful, and affectionate, and other days they were quite cold, irritable, withdrawn, or perhaps outright hostile or possibly violent. You more than likely walked on eggshells, scanning the room for mood shifts, and the adult result is that you become hyper attuned to emotional shifts. You find unpredictability weirdly exciting because you were trained to associate it with closeness. So a partner who's moody or confusing doesn't really scare you because it feels familiar. and the parent was there physically, but perhaps not emotionally. You were clothed, fed, sent to school, but never really seen. No one ever asked you how you were feeling. You had to deal with your emotions all by yourself. And the adult result is that you chase emotionally unavailable people because your nervous system learned to work extra hard for scraps of connection. You believe you must earn love by being useful, patient, low maintenance, even when you're breaking inside. And then we have the part where affection could be conditional. So praise only came when you achieved something. Perhaps you were punished or ignored when you showed negative emotions. And love came with strings attached, i.e., I love you when you behave. So the adult result is that you stay in relationships where you're constantly proving your worth. You believe love is something you perform for, not something you're inherently worthy of. And when someone withholds affection, you try harder. You don't leave, you hustle. Then the final one is parentification. So you were the caretaker, emotionally or practically. You soothed your parent, you took on responsibilities beyond your age, and you kept the peace. The adult result of this is that you attract partners who are complete renovations, who need fixing, soothing, and managing. You confuse caretaking with intimacy, and you feel safest when someone needs you, even if they don't show up for you. So, this is how all of this plays out in adult relationships. It's what it looks like in here and now present moment awareness, and why trauma bonding hooks so deeply. You often say to yourself, I don't even like him that much, or her for that matter, but I can't stop thinking about them. And what's underneath? Your system is actually addicted to anxiety spikes followed by the relief, like the ones you felt when your parents stopped being angry and gave you a moment of calm. Deep inside, you just want to feel chosen. And what's underneath that is that you've spent your whole life trying to be good enough for someone who only loved you in fragments. And now you're seeking a partner who can complete the loop, finally give you the whole unconditional love you never had. So you say to yourself, I know they're bad for me, but I can't let go. And underneath all of that is letting go doesn't mean losing this person. It means grieving the fantasy that this time love would finally feel safe. You also might say to yourself, perhaps I'm just too sensitive. And underneath that is the fact that you were conditioned to override your emotional truth to stay connected to people who couldn't meet your needs. Now, when something hurts, you actually gaslight yourself before they can. So, trauma bonding isn't just about the person you're dating, it's about who your nervous system learned to bond to in order to survive. So, until you feel safe enough to want peace more than adrenaline, you'll keep calling chaos home and labeling it as love. So, yes, this is a crucial truth, and almost no one ever says it plainly. I'm going to touch on this particular topic because it's the one that I see the most of. People pleasers are often the most trauma bonded of all. So, people pleasers are not weak, they're definitely not naive. They're just trained from childhood to override their own reality to stay connected. And in adulthood, this becomes an absolute magnet for chaos. So, we have Mr. Nice Guy and Mr. Nice Gal. And inside, these people actually say to me so frequently, but I was so nice to them, so kind to them. Why did they treat me like shit? So, Mr. or Ms. Nice, the warm, emotionally intelligent, self aware partner who gives and gives and gives, hoping one day that someone will finally see the real them and say, you're the one. They don't actually date people, they rescue them. They never set boundaries, they explain themselves and hope to be understood, and oh my god, no, they never get angry. They swallow their rage and call it compassion. They're actually first-rate responders, not initiators. They stay calm while their partner screams, withdraws, love bombs, ghosts, fill in the blank. And then they apologize for absolutely everything, even things that weren't their fault. So where on earth does all this come from? This is often the child who is praised for being good or quiet or very easy to manage. Oh, they're so placid. And they got love through being helpful, not by being authentic. They were taught to prioritize absolutely everybody else's comfort over their own. And they learned that expressing their own needs would equal rejection, guilt, or possibly punishment. So they grew up learning if I'm nice enough, no one will leave me. If I'm patient enough, they'll change. And if I'm easy enough to love, they'll finally love me back. So this profoundly addictive dance ensues between the people pleaser and the chaotic partner. This can also often feel very hot, magnetic, totally impulsive, very emotionally intense, and the one who triggers every part of their nervous system and makes them feel alive. But really, it's just chaos. And it's in chaos that the trauma bond begins. Let me outline the choreography. So we have the people pleaser who soothes and regulates, and then the chaotic partner creates drama and distance. Then the people pleaser over explains and over apologizes. The chaotic partner projects, blames, and often explodes. Then the people pleaser tries to keep the peace, and the chaotic partner disrupts peace to test control. Then the people pleaser hopes love will heal them, and then the chaotic partner pushes the limits to feel powerful. The people pleaser then believes empathy will unlock all the safety, but the chaotic partner interprets the kindness as weakness. So the people pleaser confuses control through niceness with safety, and the chaotic partner confuses power through emotional domination with intimacy. And why are they so hooked? Because at some unconscious level, both are repeating childhood roles. The people pleaser is trying to earn the love they never fully got, and the chaotic partner is reenacting instability, but with control this time. And both are absolutely terrified of abandonment. So they stay locked in a cycle that feels like intensity, but it's really just reenactment. However, that reenactment comes at a massive price. So the cost of this is that the people pleaser's sense of self starts to erode. They become truly exhausted, totally anxious, hypervigilant, and they start calling panic love and walking on eggshells normal. And then the chaotic partner, they often see no reason at all to change. They're being emotionally fed without ever having to actually grow up or show up. And there's a wake up call. If you think being kind will save the relationship, ask yourself this: would I actually need to be this endlessly kind, patient, and forgiving if this person was actually safe for me? So remember, you're not here to be their parent. You're definitely not their therapist. You're here to be met in union, not to keep managing someone who treats love like a war zone. So, my message to Mr. or Ms. Nice: your niceness is not the problem, it's who you're giving it to. They haven't earned it. And if your niceness is a trauma response, a way to secure love by avoiding conflict, then you're not being loving, you're being compliant. And compliance doesn't create connection, it just delays collapse. Is the penny dropping yet? Yeah, I know it is. Stay with me. So, let me show you what happens when the nice one finally wakes up, smells the coffee, and stops mistaking being good for being honest, and stops mistaking being loyal for being self-abandoning. This is what happens when the people pleaser wakes up and says, I'm done being the soft place for someone who keeps throwing knives. So when you choose truth over tolerance, that's about setting a boundary and meaning it. So essentially, all you have to say is, I'm not going to explain the same things 50 times over. You heard me the first time. Now I'm watching what you do. No more over explaining, justifying, softening every sentence to avoid triggering the other person. They start trusting their gut instead of seeking permission to honor it. And no, it's not aggression. You're just being clear. Then stop performing. Stop pretending to be calm to keep the other person regulated. Say to yourself, I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to have needs. I'm not going to shrink just because you get loud. Call them out on their crap. When you no longer carry the emotional temperature of the relationship on your back, you stop being the caretaker and start being a full human. You learn that real love includes space for your own discomfort as well, and your needs have to be met. That's truly, truly important. And you'll begin to recognize that loyalty is not healing. Say to yourself, me staying doesn't fix you, it just breaks me. And that's the illusion. So you're actually saying to yourself, if I love them enough, they'll finally feel safe and stop hurting me. But that illusion needs to die a death. You need to realize that love is not a rehab center for the emotionally erratic. And you need to stop calling betrayal complex just to avoid grieving it. Then you'll finally come home to yourself and you will realize that you were trying to be everything for someone who couldn't even be consistent for 5 seconds. So when you start listening to your own body instead of the excuses, the silence from the other person stops feeling like death and it starts feeling like relief. You stop needing the other person to validate the pain because they finally validated themselves. And then your real power returns. You basically get yourself a nice set of boundaries and you get yourself a massive dose of self-respect. And you stop being nice and you start being real. And then the chaotic person, well, they're either going to collapse without their emotional caretaker, jog on to someone else, or start spinning harder to try and pull you back in. Now that you have to fight. And here's the magic. If you really do the work in yourself, it's not going to work anymore on you because once that people pleaser feels what peace feels like, they never ever confuse it again with chaos, ever. So you weren't loyal, you were terrified to be abandoned, and you weren't kind, you were compliant, and you didn't stay because they were worth it. You stayed because you didn't believe you were. That wasn't love. That was your trauma dressed up as empathy to keep you in the fire. You weren't the safe one, you were the self-abandoning one, the emotional contortionist, the peacekeeper in a war zone that you never started, but kept cleaning up after. And you're tired. You thought they were your mirror. They weren't. They were your unhealed memory begging you to finally walk away. And now you know. So don't go back to sleep after you've woken up. If your heart's breaking right now, it means you're finally hearing yourself. So do you want it to end hard and clean? With chaos, it's the only way. And have empathy for yourself. If you had an addicted, inconsistent, emotionally unreliable parent, and you now find yourself entangled with an addicted, emotionally chaotic partner, realize you're swimming around in Freud's repetition compulsion at full volume, and the unconscious is acting like a haunted sat nav, rerouting you back to the same wreck over and over again. So get yourself some friends for support because it's going to take a bit of strength to break the cycle. I'll break it down in real grounded terms. If you're living this and not yet realizing the full extent of the loop, I'm just going to go back over it a little bit deeper so you really get it. I'm going to give you a few examples. So if you were someone who grew up with an addicted parent, let's say you're a child and your parent is an alcoholic or hooked on pills or even just chronically emotionally dysregulated. Some days they're present and laughing and hugging you and full of love, and other days they're gone physically, emotionally, maybe they're angry, maybe passed out or perhaps blaming you. You wait and you wonder and you try harder and you become the watchful one. You learn how to read moods before they even land. You become hyper attuned to chaos because it's your only shot at safety. And somewhere in your young, tender mind, you make a sacred promise to yourself. If I can be good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, maybe they'll stay. Maybe they'll get better. Maybe they'll be my mommy or my daddy. So when you're an adult, your unconscious can drag you towards another addicted individual. You may not know it at first, but You fast forward 20 years and you're dating somebody who perhaps uses drink, drugs, porn, gambling, sex, or chaos to escape themselves. They might disappear emotionally or physically regularly and make promises they don't keep. They might hurt you and then say, "Oh, I didn't mean to. I really love you," and say sorry, sorry, and love bomb you and buy you presents and make it up to you. And your body and your nervous system, it recognizes this, it lights up. But not because it's love, because it's familiar. It feels like home, it feels like your childhood. This is your unconscious, and this is what it says. This is your chance to finish the story, to finally get the love you couldn't reach as a child. You just have to stay long enough, fix it hard enough, and earn it better this time. That's Freud's repetition compulsion. And Freud noticed something that every therapist still sees today. People don't just remember trauma, they repeat it, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they're trying to master it. Your unconscious brain, remember, it isn't logical, it's emotional. It believes that you can recreate the wound and get a different outcome, and that if you do that, you'll finally be free. So what do? You pick someone with the same emotional profile as your parent, but this time you'll win them over. You'll stay when you should run. You parent them, you explain to them, you plead with them, you beg them. You become a child in an adult body, loving someone who's not available and calling it loyalty. Let me give you the map of the unconscious in really simplistic terms. We lay it out. Here is how the unconscious runs the show. So you got your conscious mind, which is what you know and say, and your preconscious mind, which is what you almost know, and then your unconscious is what actually drives your choices. So the conscious mind says, "I just want a healthy relationship." And then the preconscious says, "I think this reminds me of my dad. Weird." Then the unconscious says, "This chaotic partner feels like home. I'm obsessed. I'm in love." You don't fall for the addict because you're reckless. You fall for them because they match your earliest love imprint. Inconsistent, unsafe, and just out of reach. And what you say to yourself is, maybe this time I'll be good enough to make them stay. Let me give you the truth that frees you. You're not choosing them, your wound is. And your wound doesn't want love, it wants resolution. It wants to rewrite history by reenacting the same script with a brand new set of actors. And here's the thing. The story can't end differently if the cast is the same. You can't fix your parent through your partner. You can't rescue somebody into loving you consistently. And when you finally see it, you'll stop calling addiction depth, you'll stop calling volatility passion, and you'll stop parenting your partner and start reparenting yourself. You don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. You just need to give yourself the thing you always needed, someone who stays. Now let me turn to what healing actually looks like. It's where the magic starts, but it looks nothing like you'd expect. So how to tell you're no longer in a trauma bond, even if it feels like a midlife crisis with tea breaks? Ask yourself, do you now find dramatic, moody people a bit exhausting? Are you turned off by someone who replies, "Hey," and nothing else? Do you get bored during text fights and consider going to bed instead of writing a novel-length reply with bullet points and a lot of emotional subtext? Did you recently block somebody without sending a 12-paragraph closure message explaining your emotional journey? If yes, congratulations, you're healing. And then you start noticing red flags and you walk right away. You don't manage anything, you don't try and be understanding, you just quietly think, "No, I've met your kind before, I filed them under what the fuck was I thinking, and I'm logging off." So peace feels very weird at first. You think something's wrong because you're not anxious. You might kind of miss the adrenaline and the fireworks and the gut-wrenching texting games, and then one day you'll realize you slept 8 whole hours, drank water, went for a long walk or a run, and didn't cry on the bathroom floor once. Plus, you start talking to yourself differently. Instead of thinking, why wasn't I enough? You think, why did I think I had to work so hard to be loved? Hmm. And then you crave what you might think initially are boring things, but they're rather healthy things. People who text back, Sunday mornings with coffee, nice walks, trip to the cinema, zero drama, someone asking how you are, not where you've been. And you start associating love with safety, not survival. And then you don't want closure anymore. You realize closure was just a fancy word for I want them to finally validate my pain. But you don't need that now. You've already done the thing they never could. You actually bore witness to yourself. And you forgive yourself, not for being naive, but for being loyal to what you once thought was love, for surviving in the only way you knew how, and for hoping, even when it hurt. Healing isn't pretty, it's not some dramatic rising from the ashes or anything. It's more like you in pajamas with a tub of Haagen-Dazs, unfollowing somebody and perhaps blocking somebody, and maybe munching Cheerios straight from the box, whispering, not today, Satan. But it feels damn good to finally choose you and leave all the chaos behind. At some point, you stop crawling towards healing and just say, I'm done. Not in any kind of dramatic way. No rituals, nothing weird or wonderful. But there's a moment where you look at a text that used to unravel you and your only response is, meh, get fucked. You know, that's the pivot. You're done. And you start running towards peace like it's the last train out of a collapsing city. You realize your sanity is not negotiable, and neither is your self-respect. And you definitely stop romanticizing someone who used to make you feel like some kind of crazy side character in a movie, because you're so worn out you don't remember the old you. But here's what nobody tells you. Peace is hilarious. It's you laughing alone. It's you laughing with friends. You're not spiraling. It's freedom. And yeah, initially it's going to feel like boredom, but in the end it's quite thrilling and weird and brilliant, and you get quite used to it. You just begin to mind yourself, and you start just wearing clothes that are comfortable for you and minding yourself, and you go to bed without waiting for a reply, and you stop checking if they've seen your story, and you start living your own. And the day you block them and feel nothing is better than sex. Actually, it is sex. It's sex with your own dignity. And you don't just heal, you evolve. You become deliciously unavailable to chaos. And you become a person who doesn't chase love because you're too busy embodying it and giving it to yourself. And you start asking, does this feel good in my body? Instead of, how do I make myself good enough for someone else? You realize you were never too much. You were just too alive for people committed to being emotionally constipated. And you're done with that. So now you're not hoping that they'll come back. You're hoping they never do, because your peace is loud, your boundaries are high, and your phone is blessedly silent. You didn't just walk away from chaos, you ran headfirst into yourself. And guess what? You were worth the sprint. So when you finally choose you, you don't wake up one morning miraculously healed. You wake up sick of your own bullshit. You wake up bone tired from waiting for someone to treat you like a human instead of a pit stop for their emotional avoidance issues or chaos. And at first it looks like nothing. So you might reread the same messages a couple of times, and you might have to fight with yourself, resisting the urge to reply here and there, or sending passive-aggressive memes or emojis. But just sit in your hands so you don't send a just checking in. If you're worried, hand your phone to your friend for a day. And then something is going to shift eventually. So you will really prioritize yourself. You'll stop playing detective in someone else's emotional crime scene, and you'll stop explaining your worth to people who actually understood you just fine. They just didn't give a damn. They didn't care. So stop fighting for a love that only works when you're self-abandoning. And suddenly, peace is not boring anymore. It's holy. It's you relaxing in a bath at 8 p.m., catching a Netflix and dropping off to sleep. It's sleeping through the night without mentally drafting a closure message to somebody or preparing for the next row you're going to have. It's the whole day without checking profiles and realizing halfway through that you forgot that they even existed because you're laughing again. You realize that the person you thought was your soulmate was actually just your survival pattern in nice clothes. And here's the kicker. They will come back. They always do. They'll text something deeply underwhelming like K, hey you, something nothing. And you won't get upset, you won't rage, you won't hope. You'll just look at your phone and delete without even opening and say to yourself afterwards, God, I used to get worked up over this. I used to starve for this. Thank you that I'm not there anymore. Because you're not there anymore. You're not the version of you that begged for breadcrumbs. You're the version who made a feast out of solitude, self-respect, and blocking people sometimes is healthy. And no, it's not always easy. Sometimes you will crave the chaos for a little while. Sometimes you'll crave the ache, but you won't go back because you know now. Loving someone shouldn't feel like spiritual self-harm. And choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. You're not healing to become lovable. You're healing because you're finally caring about yourself. That is absolutely everything. That's the truth at the core. So let that sink in. Understand the power of being real with yourself. And that is just the beginning. So thank you for listening. I hope it's helped you. This is Annie from Soul Path Alchemy. Have a great day.